Hi, I'm Deb Falzoy. I am the head of End Workplace Abuse. And today I'm talking about how to talk with your state legislators about the Workplace Psychological Safety Act or how to lobby. So let's dive right in. So I'm going to start with a brief historical overview of the Workplace Psychological Safety Act legislation, where it stands today, where it's going, expanding and building momentum together, and then the ins and outs of lobbying, which is really what we're here to talk about today. So, lobbying is really about seeking influence, usually a politician or a public official, on an issue. So, we're really here to educate them and persuade them about our issue. And our issue is addressing workplace bullying and workplace mobbing in the American workplace. Our solution is the Workplace Psychological Safety Act, which you can learn more about at workplacepsychologicalsafetyact.org. And our platform is that psychological safety is a fundamental right which is being exploited in our workplaces. So, how we originated is that we formed as a small group of individuals. We're joining forces to create change around workplace bullying and workplace mobbing. And we've together approached elected legislative officials individually and collectively, collaboratively, and told our individual stories together. This grassroots organization that we are part of is called End Workplace Abuse, and you can find us at endworkplaceabuse.com. And we are comprised of hundreds of everyday people like you and me from all 50 states, even other countries, whose lives have been disrupted by workplace abuse. And so, this Workplace Psychological Safety Act is one issue that we're pushing. We're focusing our efforts, but it's one of many issues under End Workplace Abuse. So we would love for you to give your time to help us create this national movement that we're trying to create. This is our End Workplace Abuse is our umbrella organization. We are trying to build our strength in numbers. So we are heavily focusing on marketing and fundraising and organizing. So if you have experience or even just interest in any of those things, you don't necessarily need experience to take on something and learn as you go and for us to help you as you go. Email us at info@endworkplaceabuse.com. We're going to hear that a lot throughout this presentation. Um, and we would love your help. We're looking for people who want to take action, who want to help move the needle on this issue. And so much of it is about education, um, and then also the organizing piece of it. And we need funds to help us with that education. So that's kind of the crux of what we do, or the help that we need as part of End Workplace Abuse. So, like I said, it's all about strength in number, it's all about solidarity. And one of the things that we use for building our numbers is action alerts. This is really about working together and notifying you when public hearings or other key events are taking place so that we can testify together, whether that's written or oral, or we might need to lobby a powerful committee together. Whatever it is, we will provide you very easy, explicit instructions at that key point in time of what to do and when. So if you go onto endworkplaceabuse.com and scroll down to the map and take an action in your state, there is one action to support those workers' rights bills. You will automatically be put into our database to receive an action alert, or you can sign up directly for an action alert. But the more people we can reach out to at these key points in time, the more effective we will be at getting protections for workers. Again, like I said, we are part of End Workplace Abuse at endworkplaceabuse.com, and we are using our collective power to fight for workers' rights. If you go on to endworkplaceabuse.com, you will see just how many, first of all, it can be surprising how many basic rights we think we have that we don't actually have as workers. But we can also take action and understand that a lot of these issues are really niche forms of workplace bullying or mobbing or um, different things like even not paying somebody a livable wage who's working a full-time job. It could be an hourly worker not receiving a predictable schedule. It could be a tipped worker not receiving a basic minimum wage, whether that's, an Uber or Lyft driver or an Instacart worker or a restaurant worker, when they're relying on tips and they are, it's a bad snowstorm in New England or, just for whatever reason can't, um, it's not a busy season or a busy month, then that affects their own pay. And we want workers to have this baseline of rights. So you can see these 24 different topics that we are pushing for in order to give workers more rights. The Workplace Psychological Safety Act is the main thing that we're pushing. The second biggest thing is a ban of at-will employment, because as long as we are at the will of our employers and they can fire us for any reason or no reason at all, as long as it's not discriminatory, and that's a whole nother story because they will do it anyways and have more resources and more power to fight employers on. We need that baseline of rights for employees. We need employment contracts in order to be able to speak up more about issues. So that's the second thing that we are fighting for, or the second biggest priority, I should say. So back to the US landscape around the Workplace Psychological Safety Act. We are forming teams across the country, and we're trying to find as our first step a state legislator who will introduce the Workplace Psychological Safety Act in their states. We call this the lead sponsor. We just need one person. And we're also going to approach legislators in some of the more progressive states, the ones that have stronger workers' rights already. But it only takes one legislator to get the ball rolling. And it only takes one person to get one legislator to get the ball rolling. So we already have action in Louisiana, Massachusetts, Oregon, Rhode Island, and Texas, or state teams formed or forming there. But that leaves 45 other states that we would love to see action in. And we actually have some other states getting on board now. But if your state doesn't have a Workplace Psychological Safety Act team, or isn't one of those 5 states, and you're interested in forming one, we will walk you through every step of the way. You can email us at info@endworkplaceabuse.com. We even have a toolkit full of messaging points, of already pre-written or template letters for legislators, hearing packet templates, social media template posts, a ton of information available to you, even how to get started, how to grow your team, all sorts of tools at your disposal. But never underestimate the power of one. We've been lucky in some states to have, or even with past legislation, have worked on for one really proactive go-getter to say that they want to join our efforts. And then a second one will come along, and that's really, amazing. But even if it's just you, there is a lot that you can get done in order to get that bill number. And once you have that bill number in your state, people will know there's a person behind this actively trying to move things forward, move the needle on this issue. And that will help them come forward and say, I want to take part in this too. So like I said, we are building a national movement. We're building an army across the country. Movements are the only tool that has worked for meaningful change to change the law in the US. So we need you. We need this army of doers who not only say they want change, but are willing to roll up their sleeves and make it happen, especially by lobbying and testifying, which is where most of our efforts will go into. So I want to show you this short video, or a segment of this short video, put out by Represent Us, which is a national organization that aims to solve the corruption crisis going on the federal level. And here we have Jennifer Lawrence, who is narrating this video, and I'm just going to show you a segment of it about why we are taking this state to state approach, why passing state laws leads to federal victory. So let's just see what Jen has to say.
This line is from a Bloomberg News study. It finds that throughout American history, passing state laws leads to federal victory. Let me show you what I mean. This chart shows the number of states over time that pass laws giving women the right to vote. When it hits the right side of the chart, that's the federal victory. Okay, now I want you to watch the blue line. We're going to do this again with interracial marriage. There were a few states in the Northeast that made it legal decades ago, centuries go by, and we hit this blue line where all of a sudden there's a rush of activity, which leads pretty quickly to federal passage. So here we are again with same-sex marriage. One state, Massachusetts, for many years. A couple decades later, we hit that blue line, a jump in state activity and federal passage. This isn't about these issues. This is about a winning political strategy. The crucial finding in the Bloomberg study is that a key event, often a court decision or a grassroots campaign reaching maturity, triggers a rush of state activity that ultimately leads to a change in federal law.
So we're basically looking for that buildup of a grassroots effort across the country. A court decision would be great. It's not something that we can as easily influence, but that is our approach by going state by state. So you probably don't have a state team yet, but it's okay. This is a national effort. You can testify and lobby in other states as long as there is a virtual hearing. And actually, you can send in written testimony regardless, so it doesn't even matter if there's a virtual hearing or not. Action alerts, like I've mentioned, will tell you what to do, how to do it, when to do it. As it says in here, you won't get arrested crossing state lines. We have to cross state lines. That is our secret sauce, acting in tandem, acting together, acting collectively. Our collective power is what is going to create change. So here's our first step of this, and we actually have a separate training about introducing the bill that gets more in depth into this, but in a nutshell, the first step is finding that legislator to introduce the bill. And before legislation passes, it's called a bill before it becomes a law. So the legislator who introduces the bill, like I said, is the lead sponsor. And then the bill will be assigned a bill number for the legislative session. So about half the states have a 1-year legislative session, and the other half have about a 2-year legislative session. And with the exception of New Jersey, all of the 2-year legislative sessions start on the odd year. And when I say that they're assigned a new bill number every year, yes, we have to start from the beginning of the process, but we're building on the momentum from previous years. I want to add that bills almost never pass in their first legislative session. So it's really about just kind of understanding how things work that first session. But we keep building on not only our previous states' momentum, but on the momentum of what other states are doing. Right now, Puerto Rico is the only U.S. territory to have passed any bill with teeth. And you can learn about that one on workplace psychologicalsafetyact.org. But no other state, none of the 50 states have passed any bill with teeth on this issue. So as soon as we have one with teeth, we can use that to leverage passing it in other states. So just to give you kind of a definition here, or a difference between lobbying and testifying. Lobbying is convincing state legislators to co-sponsor the bill. So if you are a constituent, so a resident who lives in the legislator's district, you can ask your own state legislator to co-sponsor the bill, or whatever action you want them to do at that point. This is an ongoing process of asking their support until you get their support. And we'll get more into this in a few minutes here. Testifying happens at public hearings. They take place every legislative session. And citizens, everyday people, advocates, friends, family, and organizations. And when I say organizations, this can also be, an employment lawyer, a therapist, a psychologist, a university professor, a like-minded organization that's supporting rights around racial issues or LGBTQ issues, women's issues, supporting workers with disabilities or people with disabilities. Anything overlapping with discrimination is definitely a potential ally for us. But the committee members who listen to the public hearing testimony decide whether or not to move the legislation forward. And if they don't, the bill dies in committee and will need to be reintroduced the following legislative session. Like I said, that part's probably automatically going to happen in the first session. But what's also key is getting these testimonies to a key staffer on the committee that you've testified in front of, because they can actually bring the bill to a vote among the committee members. We've actually had this happen here in Massachusetts where a staffer who collected the testimony then brought, he was getting so much testimony, he actually said they were getting as much as gun control on this issue of workplace psychological safety in a previous bill that I had worked on. And then he brought it to a vote in the committee and it moved forward. So being strategic about this is really important, and we'll get into some of that shortly. But lobbying, we're really trying to simplify this and make this a less intimidating idea. It's really basically about telling your story to legislators or sharing with them information on the issue, because they have the ability to actually enact the law. And because this is a pre-recorded, uh, session here, we're not going to give you this homework assignment, but if you go on to either endworkplaceabuse.com or workplacepsychologicalsafetyact.org, actually, I would go to endworkplaceabuse.com because you can click on your state and send one email about workers' rights in your state to your 2 state legislators, and you will be put into our database. Or you can sign up for action alerts, or you can sign the petition. Whichever you decide to do, you will be put into our database where you will, first of all, like this says, feel empowered because you're using your voice, you're taking back your voice in a situation that robbed you of your voice. But you will also get notifications on future actions that we're taking. So why do we lobby? We want to create urgency around this issue of workplace bullying and mobbing. We also want to raise public awareness about employee exploitation, about the problem itself. And we want to educate our state legislators and get them to either not oppose the bill or actively support it, reminding ourselves that they work for us. Their work is paid for by tax dollars. We want to recommend a solution to them, which is the Workplace Psychological Safety Act. And we want to remind ourselves that the legislators are the ones who have the power to enact change. They make the law. They also want to get reelected to keep their position. So you speaking up, especially if it's in numbers, can show them that you can organize. And showing them that you can organize also kind of sends this message to them that you could potentially unseat them. So they have a reason to listen to their own constituents. Because you vote for them, and you can, if they don't support what you want them to support, you could potentially find someone else to run against them. You yourself could run against them. So they have a vested interest in listening to you. Here's the question of why do we lobby? So if we look at this as a continuum, we want to move our legislators from wherever they are to the right of wherever they are. So starting on the left here, if they're conservative and likely to oppose this bill, we want to at least neutralize them. We want to at least put them in the middle here, or convince them through a cost analysis, cost to the state, the business arguments, the costs around businesses, of why they should care about this. And Republicans tend to care more about less business regulation, about the costs to the state of saving money. So we can speak to them in the things around the things that they care about. This is a bipartisan issue. There are cases on both sides of individuals, vulnerable populations, and businesses. Everybody benefits from caring about employee well-being. So we can convince them more easily through those arguments. But I also want to say, too, that because Republicans, conservatives are tending to look at the data, or leaning more on the data, they actually benefit also from hearing our stories. Um, so definitely use both strategies. So when we go to people who are neutral, and these tend to be more of our moderate Democrats, if they're likely to be neutral, we want to get their support through facts and stories. That's sort of across the board here. With supporters who tend to be progressives, we want them to champion the bill. So that could be something like talking with colleagues about it, recording a video for social media. It could be writing a letter of support to the committee heads from the hearing that you took part in. It could be writing an op-ed for the city's paper. There could be all sorts of different public actions that supporters can take, but we always want to get them more. If they oppose, we want to neutralize them. If they're neutral, we want them to support, and if they already support, we want to encourage them to take public actions that are further in support. So lobbying and testifying are at the heart and soul of passing legislation. One will not suffice. We ask everyone to do both, telling your story over and over again until something is done about it. This is a marathon, not a sprint. It takes years to pass a bill. I know in Massachusetts, where I am, paid FMLA just took about 20 years to pass. I've heard of other workers' rights bills that have taken about as long. So this is a long haul. This is not going to happen overnight. But with spreading the word through education nationally, through trying to build this movement, we will hopefully accelerate that pace. So who are your state legislators? They are elected officials who represent you, like I mentioned. They want to hear from you. It is their job to listen to you. They care about being reelected, like I've said before. This is something that we might forget if we are intimidated by the process, but they are human beings. In Massachusetts, there are about 6,000 bills that get introduced every legislative session. And they cannot possibly know everything about these subjects. They can't even possibly know everything about the 50 of the bills. So know that they are not experts on this issue. You don't need to be either, but I can almost guarantee you that by having gone through this and having some insights on this issue, having read over some aspects of this, you probably know more about it than they do, unless they've experienced it themselves, which actually could be pretty likely in most, if not all, state houses. So keep that in mind as you speak with them, that you can only talk about what you can speak to, and your personal story is important. And if that's too triggering for you, or too risky for you, you can share facts about this, and you can still talk with your legislators about it. More often than not, when you actually want to talk with the state legislator, you will probably talk with their legislative aide. Any staffer from their office is great, whether that's on the state rep or assembly person side. They tend to have one legislative aide, but on the state Senate side, they tend to have a chief of staff, a political director, all sorts of different positions. You can talk with any of them. They will probably tell you who would be best to speak with, or set up a meeting with whoever is best to speak with. One of the great things is that whoever you speak with, they are information gatherers for the legislators. They keep tallies of issues brought before them, so every communication we have counts, but they will funnel the information and present the information to the legislator. So if they're getting tons of calls about an issue, they will communicate that. If they hear your story, or hear whatever you have to say in a one-on-one meeting. They will communicate that that happened. They are powerful people to get in front of, and especially knowing that a lot of times these staffers will be around through multiple state legislators, so they'll know histories. They can advise you on who else to talk to. They're really important people to get to know and speak with. So don't be just disappointed if you have a meeting with a staffer instead of the actual legislator. Like I mentioned, we want to start with our own state legislators in Massachusetts. These are state senators and state reps on the House side. The lingo varies state to state. In New York, they're called assembly people on the House side. Every state house across the country has a legislative website with email addresses and phone numbers of all the elected legislators. You can start there, or you can go to endworkplaceabuse.com, click on your state, scroll down the homepage, click on your state, take the action, and all you have to do is put in your name, address, including zip code, and it will, click on the link to go to the next screen, and it will actually tell you exactly who your state legislators are. And then you can go to your state house website and get more information on them. What are their email addresses? What are their phone numbers? And knowing, like I've said before, that they listen more intently to their own constituents. So what kind of action works best? It all works. We all have limited time, and any of these actions work, but the level of effort you put in can matter. The more effort you put in, the more impact it has, or to say it differently, the more disruptive it is, the more impact it has. So I'm going to go through these 4 different types of actions, and I'm going to start with the least effective, although like I said, it is incredibly important to even start with email. And even if that's all you have time to do, it is valuable, and we absolutely appreciate it, and it will help. But you can send an email privately. Like I said, you can either use endworkplaceabuse.com, or down the line, there will be actually more actions to take on workplacepsychologicalsafetyact.org. But once you have that email address and phone number from the state legislature website, once you've sent that email out through endworkplaceabuse.com, you can send an email directly to your state legislator with whatever you'd like to say. And then the next time you reach out, you can use the same email loop if you'd like. One of the reasons why we don't stop with that is because it is a private interaction, and from advocates who've reached out to their own legislators only using email, sometimes that can be a dead end. There's nobody holding them publicly accountable, so they don't really have to take action. They don't have to regardless, but there's no accountability with that. Phone calls are the same way, but at least they're more disruptive than email. Somebody actually has to stop what they're doing to answer the phone and listen to what you're asking about. And I'll get into a script in a minute or so. But they're more disruptive, so they'll have more of an impact. They record these correspondences either way. The next level up here at number 2 is a meeting, whether that's in person, over Zoom, individually or as a team. It's all effective. It all puts you in the same room as either a staffer or a state legislator, and it gets you into an actual conversation. If you do get a Zoom meeting with a legislator or a staffer, feel free to email us at info@endworkplaceabuse.com, and we will join you if you'd like that, if you'd feel more comfortable. We'd be happy to. We'd be happy to, talk about some of the more background or facts about this issue. But you can also go, set this meeting up for an in-person meeting at the state house. If you happen to live in a larger state, that's probably not as feasible as local office hours. So you could set up an in-district meeting. You could have a a lobby day, which is a whole other thing, but you could drop off flyers. If you go to workplacepsychologicalsafetyact.org and click on take action and scroll to the bottom and click on overview flyer, you can print that out, make copies of it, go to your state house and drop these flyers off with other people, by yourself, to just, committee members, to just your own legislators. If you're making a trip, I might visit more offices, but you could be strategic about it, or you could decide I want to make tons of copies and drop them off to everybody. That works too. And then number one is public action. So this public accountability that I mentioned. So I could post something on Facebook or Twitter or any social media, requesting something of that legislator and tagging them. Always being respectful, but being direct too. With whatever, sometimes it's just Senator so and so, will you co-sponsor the Workplace Psychological Safety Act, and then put in the bill number or bill numbers. Creative direct action is also a thing. So this is all about public action. So whether that's a projection on the State House, or a sign on an overpass above a highway, or a theatrical display in a busy shopping area, or even down the line when you get more people involved, it could be a rally or a vigil, or a protest, something to that effect. But creative direct action is public action that you could get reporters to cover, that will get more attention to the issue. And PR or public relations works in the same way. If you can get reporters to cover this, that is golden. Whether that's a creative direct action, or I should say creative direct action, or just a stance on an issue, or something that just happened, I should say. That the urgency around PR is key. Something related that you could comment on that is indirectly or directly related to what we're doing. And then naming names in your quotes can help, saying this senator, we're asking Senator so-and-so to move this bill through this committee, or, just calling for that specific action to take place in that public record. So here's part of the process when you want to reach out to your state legislators. So the first thing to do is to research, find out if they already support the Workplace Psychological Safety Act. Are they already a co-sponsor? Have they co-sponsored other workers' rights bills? Are they a past supporter of other workplace anti-abuse legislation? So the Healthy Workplace Bill has been introduced in other states. You could tell them how this bill differs, why it's stronger protection, why it would provide stronger protections for workers. If they don't already support it, maybe anticipate where they might stand on the bill. If they're conservative and likely opposed, can you bring facts to neutralize them? If they're likely to be neutral, can you share facts and stories to get their support? If they're already a supporter, can you ask them to take public action to champion the bill? Ask them to talk with colleagues, record a video for social media, write a letter of support to committee heads, write an op-ed to the paper. This bipartisan support is really important. So then you want to, once you've done that kind of basic legwork, which shouldn't take too much time, you want to send an email to introduce yourself to your state legislators. You should have two of them, the senator and the rep or assembly person, and tell them you live in their district. Or you can call to ask to schedule a meeting, either in person, locally, or at the State House, or via Zoom, whatever works for you, to talk about workplace bullying and mobbing and how it's affected you. You want to know the bill number or numbers and the name of the bill, which is the Workplace Psychological Safety Act. If you don't hear back, you can follow up through email or phone, and a sample script would be, hi, my name is so-and-so. I live in such and such town. I'm calling to ask Senator or Representative so-and-so if I can set up a time to meet with them to sign on to the Workplace Psychological Safety Act, and then say the bill number. They might ask you your address just to make sure that you live in their district. but that's a sample script. So then you want to prepare for this meeting that you're having. There is absolutely power in numbers. We can't say that enough, but don't feel like you have to bring in other people in order to have this meeting. Ideally, you want to assemble a team of 3 to 5 people, but don't, like I said, don't feel obligated to do that. Meeting with just you and your legislator is incredibly powerful, or you and their aide, or whatever, whoever staffer makes sense for them. If you do have multiple people, you can kind of divvy up the the communication during the meeting. So you could have a fact provider who's facilitating the meeting, although the staffer will probably be the one facilitating the meeting, but you could open up with facts about the issue, summary of the bill, make sure that you're staying concise, on time, taking notes, asking for that desired action, whether that's, you probably don't want to say, will you remain neutral on this issue, but asking them to support it. You want to ultimately get their support. If they already support it, you want to see how they can publicly support it. If you have more than 2 people, you can divide up these tasks. And then you want people to also, uh, or I should also add that if you are having a Zoom meeting, me or another person in our group can absolutely be that fact provider for you. And then the storytellers can share summaries of their stories in 3 to 5 minutes. We want to keep this brief. The meetings might not take more than like 20 to 30 minutes. Their time is valuable, so we want to respect that. We want to stick to facts about what our role was, what the abuse tactics were, the outcome, the effect on us, and why we want the bill to pass, what we think is going to change as a result. Um, and like I said, we're happy to join you. Just email us at info@endworkplaceabuse.com and we'll see if we can join you. When it comes to telling your story, you want to stay on track. You can use it when you testify. You want to keep it brief. You want to keep it like under 3 minutes if you can. So here's a basic, feel free to take a screenshot of this. You can talk about as an outline what industry you worked in. What did you do? How did the bullying begin? And I want to pause here for a minute to say, um, we don't recommend naming the bully themselves. If it's a closed meeting, it probably doesn't really matter either way. But feel free to decide if you want to name the employer. Some people do, some people don't. It's totally up to you and what risk you could incur by naming the employer. I just want to mention that because a lot of people ask about that. You can talk about how the bullying began, what tactics were used, how it escalated, how you felt, how the employer reacted, or in a lot of cases didn't react, what the impact was on you, what visible signs of impact there were on the organization, if there were any, and why you want this legislation to pass. You can bolster it with evidence, statistics, relevant articles. You can actually find some articles on endworkplaceabuse.com. There are pre-written testimony topics you can pull from. We're happy to share those with you, or you can email us. And you can bring copies of the packet if you do meet in person with the flyer that's available on the Take Action page of workplacepsychologicalsafetyact.org. The bottom, there's an overview flyer. There's also a myths flyer. If you happen to have a list of co-sponsors that you can get from the State House or the state legislature website, you can bring a list of who's already supporting it. You might have a list of organizations who support it. Like I said, survey data, statistics, stories, news articles. If a lead sponsor has any sort of letter that they've drafted, their own testimony, a dear colleague letter, anything that will help you bolster your argument. And then when you meet with them, you pass out the packets, tell them your story, ask them to co-sponsor the Workplace Psychological Safety Act and or contact committee heads about moving the bill forward. Be polite yet assertive, thank them for their time. This will probably not be the only time you meet with them or talk to them, so you are relationship building. So here's where we get into the bogus excuses, and you will hear a lot of them as you go through this process. One is, I'm just going to go through each of these. One is lack of knowledge. They might say, I'm not familiar with this issue. So you could say, great, I'm happy to educate you, and you give them information. They might say, in terms of lack of expertise or focus, my expertise is blank issue and I only focus on it, or there are thousands of bills, I can't read or co-sponsor all of them. But you can say something like, you represent me and other community members, and this is why it matters to me. I have actually heard this from my own legislator who said that she only supports bills that she can read in their final language. But then going on the website, there were plenty of bills she had co-sponsored that aren't in their final language. So I respectfully came back with that. Lack of pressure. People aren't calling me about this, or they don't care. So you are living proof that that is not correct. So if you get more people to contact them, that could help. Legislators tend to think their districts are more conservative than they really are. They might say that there's lack of popular support. My district is very conservative. Again, get more people to contact them. There might be a lack of will. They might say, I don't sign on to things, or if I take a public position, it harms my ability to negotiate. You could say that signing on to things helps to shape negotiations. Sitting on the sidelines reduces bargaining power. They might, in terms of lack of understanding politics, say you don't need to bother me, spend time on others. This might be because they already support it, but like we've gone over, you could say that it's about, getting them to champion this publicly, or getting, you don't want to say it's about moving everyone along the continuum, but you want to say, can we ask you to be public about this support? A lack of independence can be a pretty common excuse. They might say, well, what does leadership think? But they're not paid to do what leadership tells them to do, even though a lot of times things are designed to cater to what leadership wants. You can remind them that they report to their constituents. And then lack of time, they might say, we have other priorities, I'm busy with them. But again, remind yourself that we want to move them along the continuum. So you could say something with, well, how can we get you to support this, at least to co-sponsor it? Or, what would make you co-sponsor this? Or you can have a respectful conversation with them, is kind of the whole point of this page, where they will try to make an excuse if they're not willing to support it, but you can call them out on it respectfully. And then follow up, keep the pressure on, stay connected with their team, provide regular updates. If they show public support, we want to acknowledge that. We want to share it, amplify it. We can get others in our district to call and email in support of this bill. Include the bill numbers. Experts say that just 3 to 5 people contacting their state legislators on an issue is enough to get it on their radar. So keep telling your story. The more state legislators, or even legislators in other states with active workplace psychological safety acts know about this, the better. If your email is already written, you can copy, paste it, send it to every legislator in your state if you want. And when you receive action alerts from us, if you've already given public testimony, your story is already written, so you can do it all in 2 hours. You could send 10 a day. Just the point is, reach out, say what's on your mind, and then testify, and you can use your story from state to state. Like I mentioned, in Massachusetts, there are over 6,000 bills filed each year. So many issues are as compelling as ours. And whoever makes the most noise gets the most attention. So it never stops until we win. We want to win over our legislators individually. We want to win over powerful committee members when we receive action alerts to do so. You can actually watch past hearing in Massachusetts for other bills that we've worked on. It can be emotionally draining. These can be hours long. This particular one, we waited 3.5 hours to be able to speak. It's not like that in every state, but it was like that here. You could watch this in small segments. And then we also have a 3-minute version for a different piece of legislation that we had where people, spoke their piece about it. I'm actually just going to play this really quickly.
Thank you for this opportunity to testify in support of the Dignity at Work Act. What our laws do today is not enough.
For them is to give up and exit the organization.
Left unattended, bully stories will come to conclusion.
Thank you for this opportunity to testify in support of the Dignity at Work Act. What our laws do today is not enough. We must pass a strong law with strong enforcement that will protect targets and motivate employers. Thank you for this opportunity to testify in support of the Dignity at Work Act. What our laws do today is not enough. We must pass a strong law with strong enforcement that will protect targets and motivate employers to take the necessary steps to prevent, detect, remedy, and eliminate workplace bullying.
But discrimination law is not enough to help us, even though there's a discriminatory impact with this epidemic.
The only course of action given for them is to give up and exit the organization.
Left unattended, bully stories will come to control workplace climate and the direction of operations in wrapping everyone.
Or when I talk with a mother of an adult child who took his or her life because of relentless workplace abuse.
I had a supervisor who used to call me into her office and would spend the first 30 to 45 minutes of my workday screaming at me.
4 decades of research reveal my demise was set in stone the moment I reported abusive behavior.
I wonder how you would feel if you watched your loved one go from being a vibrant, happy person who loved their job reduced to a puddle.
They have non-disclosure agreements. They basically are really good at silencing victims.
Systemic racism, sexism, and classism pervade our school systems.
Microsoft's attempt to steal my voice with an NDA that caused the most harm to me.
Policies and training videos are worthless unless they follow through.
I began to understand why people contemplate suicide when they're bullied.
Severance, a non-disparagement agreement, and an offer of tens of thousands of dollars to leave quietly.
If DAWA had been in place when I was going through this ordeal, perhaps the bully would have thought twice.
There is a culture of bullying that is passed down because there is no legal remedy.
There are still employees being abused by this company and afraid to come forward.
I'm testifying in honor of my sister, Leslie Ellington's memory, who was also a victim of bullying.
The inability to use my education and expertise
is a criminal offense prosecutable and compensation worthy for everyone else but a fellow employee.
I've experienced working for Broadway and film producer Scott Rudin, discriminated against women and people of color, firing them far more frequently than white men.
Its function was to maintain the status quo of a culture where racism and discrimination were channeled through bullying acts.
The tactics that were used were atrocious.
The economic instability, job insecurity, absentee leadership, rigid hierarchies.
The person responsible for most of the workplace abuse was allowed to act as the decision maker in my mere survival.
Dozens of lawyers tell me there's no law against being a jerk.
And it needs to stop. We need your help.
We need to do something about workplace bullying.
So questions, feel free to email us anytime. I've said it before, I'll say it again, info@endworkplaceabuse.com. Reach out to us for any reason. But we would love your support, even if you don't want to introduce the bill in your state. We would love for you to help lobby in other states. And there is also opportunity to testify in other states. So thank you so much for your time.